Hi everybody, my name is Don Bowman. My company is Agilicus, and we make it really easy for people to be secure with different users in a manufacturing environment. And today we're going to talk about VPN alternatives for manufacturing. And this topic was spawned by a set of near misses earlier this year in the industrial control system sector around VPNs. And there was some emergency directives from CISA on this, and I thought it'd be a good topic to talk about how we could make things just a lot easier for end users, a lot more secure for the operator, and avoid some of those challenges. And in it, I'm going to talk about how we've done that in some other places and some of the advantages, etc. So that's the agenda today, is the critical infrastructure remote needs. So today it's largely solved by either not being remote. People come on site to do support and maintenance and remote operations, joint ventures in manufacturing, ship things out of band. Or sometimes it's done with a VPN. Or sometimes there's tools that are repurposed. TeamViewer is a common one. But we'll talk about some of the alternatives to that, and specifically around how Zero Trust can make it easier to solve some of these issues for every party, and more economical and more secure. That's the thing I really love, is things that are non-zero sum. You know, poker is zero sum. You win, I lose. This is non-zero sum. Everything gets better. So that's the agenda today. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and after the webinar, my team will follow up with you with some more information and see if we can chat. So first, I thought I would just put in a poll. This is semi-anonymous, but you know, in January and February, CISA dropped 3 emergency VPNs. It basically said you have 0 seconds to replace this thing. Ivanti, Cisco, Fortinet. And we recently saw a really dramatic one with Palo Alto last week. The VPN's in a very trusted location in the environment. It either is the firewall or is behind the firewall. And it kind of has ongoing layer 3 access to nearly everything. So if you have access to that, it's kind of like having an Ethernet cable. So I decided to see, you know, what would people say? You know, what are these emergency directives? I never heard of that. You know, oh my God, let's jump into action. Okay, we're going back to the way my grandfather did it. Let's get in a car and drive to sites, you know, bring a laptop and bring a cable. Just sort of shred the docs and pretend it never happened. Never talk about it. Patched once and forgot it. So that's sort of what we see, is people have different reactions. Some people are like, I don't really follow. There's a lot of security notifications in the world. Yet another one. What am I supposed to do? Read every one and act on them? These emergency directives indicated that there were active threats being implemented by nation-state attackers and, well, also cybercrime, ransomware. And that was a real problem, is, you know, CISA themselves was hacked. You know, this is what they do, and they got hacked through the use of this Ivanti VPN. So I'll just end the poll there, publish the results. Not too many people answered, but usually they don't. That's okay. It's just sort of to give us an idea of where we're at. So the needs. So we're talking today about manufacturing. Manufacturing is a very broad brush. You know, it could be, you know, a small metal bending trailer shop with a Windows 2003 box in the corner, one of my actual customers. And it could be somebody with a multinational organization that has a joint venture, and there's, you know, inventory being checked in and out from one site to the other, and there's a shared ERP across them, and you know, it can range a lot. But one of the challenges that we see is there's a really big difference in the lifespan of the equipment. You know, in the IT part of your network, you buy a laptop, a couple years later, it's end of life and you replace it. The same is true of the software you generally run there. When you look at the industrial side of the network, and it's really blurry, it's not so much a sharp edge. As you move into that, you start talking about a SCADA historian, it's running SQL Server 2008. You start talking about a PLC. The PLC is bolted to a machine that you spend a lot of money on. Clearly, you're not going to be ripping that out every couple of years. How long is it going to live? And are there going to be security patches? Does it even make sense to apply them? It could take production down. That's the difference. You know, in information technology, we see patches as a good thing. They bring us new features, they bring us new functionality, they bring us more security. When we look at production, we view patches as a bad thing. You know, what's it going to change? Do I want that change? Why do I want that change? We've got this change control process we put in with ISO. You know, it's not designed to go fast. It's designed to prevent stuff from occurring. It's everywhere in the plant. It could be in the HVAC systems, it could be in the building management, the facilities, the locks. It could be specific items, the HMI, the human machine interface, to something, to the process control. And it could be that ERP. We see a lot of our clients that have an ERP that manages inventory and timesheets and things between sites, but those sites might be different corporations. And in turn, some of the users might not work for the corporations. They don't have a strong identity that I can't sign it as me at company. What does that mean? There's also a lot more constituents. When you look at the IT part of the organization, it really is just my staff and my direct contractors. When you look at the production side of the house, you're talking about a set of system integrators, the vendors. The vendors are all looking to move their stuff into a SaaS model. We saw this starting with people like John Deere. They're making tractor as a service, and you can't use it unless it's connected to the internet, and you're not allowed to repair it. You're starting to see Rockwell, Siemens, Emerson, those types of people looking to have license managers on their stuff. And, that's things, it's a creeping internetism. They're looking for predictive analytics. When is something going to fail? That bearing is wearing out. Okay, we're going to do that by sending data to the cloud. You've got contractors, you've got maybe that joint venture I talked about, sometimes regulatory. More and more of these people have a legitimate need to interoperate with the plant, and these skill sets are getting more and more customized, which means it's harder to have one person have all of them, and travel time's getting more and more expensive. As a consequence, we're switching to remote. COVID accelerated that, but this was already well in flight. Each of those things has different scope, risk, and controls, and it's difficult to satisfy all of that with a singular solution. Just saying, hey, here's VPN access for your company. The account is shared, but just, if somebody leaves your company, tell me and I'll change the password. It's no longer really good enough. So when we talk about a VPN, it's really a long Ethernet cable. That's what it does. It's trying to make a network that is remote appear as if it's not remote. And it's a really great solution for a certain set of people. So people who have very broad-based needs, so your IT staff. I log into everything and support it. What's the point in having that more fine-grained? But the VPN is really much better at being all or nothing on-off. Now, you can put ACL rules in and say, this port and this IP range. It gets very, very challenging to do it at any scale. And it really evolved from the concept of dial-up networking, where you connect to a network and now you're part of that network. And it predates the ideas of SaaS and cloud, where the things are not in any one location, etc. And it was really also conceived around the singular company principle. I work for IBM. I'm part of IBM. IBM is everything. As a consequence, all users were alike, and everybody has equal access. It's once you're in the door, you have a badge, you're trusted. The nice things about the VPN, and remember we're talking about VPN alternatives here today, is it just works. People say, look, it's like being at there. I don't have to worry about anything. There's no additional steps. Once it's up, things just work, the way I expect them. I can leave it running forever. There's none of this sign-in magic that I need to be bothered with. Why should I have to do that? That seems like a needless hassle to provide credentials. The transport's encrypted, so if I'm in Starbucks, it's probably okay because the underlying. I know the protocols I use aren't encrypted, but the transport is, so it should be okay. There's a lot of trust built up in those vendors. People say Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet. Those are great companies. They make great products. They got great pedigrees. They got encryption credentials a mile long, and they're reviewed, and people trust it. The bad. Why are we looking for VPN alternatives at all? So the first one that I hear a lot is a system integrator or an MSP or somebody supporting you saying, look, I support 10 clients. I can't install all of their VPN software on my machine. They conflict. This person runs Cisco AnyConnect version 1, this version runs Cisco AnyConnect version 2, they run Palo Alto. What am I supposed to do? Have a different laptop for every client I work with? Plus, who's buying the licenses for these? Am I? Or are you? How's that working? But another one that people often miss is that they say things like, my video calls break when the VPN is up. And what we're really talking about here is what's called a split horizon model. So there's two ways to use a VPN. One is you turn it on and all of your traffic moves into the other location. And it's like you were there. But that means when you do a video call like this, it goes from you to the plant and back out the plant's internet. And that trombone action, it basically, the more users on, the less bandwidth you get. The alternative is a non-split horizon VPN, where you take some subnets, you say these ones go through the VPN, these ones don't. The problem is there's some security risks there. You can leak stuff where people can inject into it. You also hear some things like, I can't print at home. That's the split horizon VPN. When it's up, you lose access to your local network. But otherwise, sometimes it's device-based. One of the people that support you says, look, I've pulled over to the side of the road. All I have with me is my tablet. I need to get onto that HMI to check something, but I can't because your VPN client's not available for my tablet. Sometimes it's overlapping subnets. They say, it's a technical constraint. We run this private network and you run the same private network. And when the VPN comes up, it gets confused. And that shared account challenge, I've talked about this before. You think about a really big company, Siemens, right? How many people work for Siemens? A couple 100,000. And Siemens runs the chiller in your environment, and you've created the Siemens account. But somebody got fired from Siemens this morning. And we've seen this happen, several times in high profile. The Colonial Pipeline attack on the gasoline supply really was that. The water attack in Florida, where there was a shared password used here, those shared accounts really, really are damaging. There's really no reason for them. If you could have equal simplicity and not have shared accounts, you would, because the security would be so much higher, the trust verify, the audit, etc. This is what a VPN is not good at. Once it's up, and nobody knows, all the actions after that point are they disappear. The really ugly part about it is, connecting a VPN to someone, their risk becomes your risk. Their business practices become your business practices. Their ransomware is your ransomware. So, if you're a manufacturing organization that has multiple plants and you just mesh everything together, if something goes wrong in one, it's going to ripple through the others, and you don't want that. But the same is going to be true for the vendors that support you. And however they support you, whether it's remote operations 24/7, or whether it's break fix, or it's commissioning something new, you don't want that leaking in. What's going wrong there, you don't want coming into yours. Those emergency directives, those were a really big wake-up call, but it's not really a new issue, in that a device that has access to everything and has a weakness and has these shared passwords, suddenly it's a problem. You really need that fine-grained authentication, who the individual user is, and then what they're allowed to access as a tuple, which is what Zero Trust is all about. And so don't panic. Obviously, there's solutions. Let's define the desired end state, that connectivity nirvana. Think of all your task workers. Really, they have a small set of resources they need. And again, I'm not talking about the IT administrator here who has a need to check everything. I'm talking about the person that does your accounting and needs QuickBooks. I'm talking about the person who is checking and clearing alarms on a process. I'm talking about the person that is programming the PLC on the new line that's coming up, or adjusting something on a previous one. These people, what they say is, look, I access the resources I need from where I am on the device of my choice using my existing single sign-on credentials. I'm not remembering another password for you. I'm going to write it down. Is that what you want? I just want to click sign in. I've signed into Office 365. I should be good for everything I need to do from that. And we translate that into any user, any application, any device, any network. And that's really what I'm pitching you today, is an identity-aware proxy that allows that single sign-on, that allows the user to be themselves and see the resources they need and nothing more. And then if they get breached, the blast radius is just that. They can't get sideways. They can't get into anything else, even if they try maliciously to do it. And, my friends, that is what's called Zero Trust. There's a lot of ballyhoo about this. It's been talked about for a bunch of years, and it's everywhere. And some people say it's big, it's small, it's this, it's that. It's three basic things. There's three problems to solve. The who problem, who are you? The what problem, what are you allowed to do? And the how problem, how do I get you to that thing? And our implementation of it is such that we don't create a new who. The user signs in with their existing Microsoft or Google or Apple or Yahoo credentials. Everybody has them. They're supplied by the company they work for. If that company is your company, then it's obvious. If that company is one you work with, if they get fired, they're going to get taken out of there. Just using that identity doesn't give any permission. It just means you know who they are. It's kind of like looking at their driver's license. It was issued by a certain jurisdiction. You look at it and say, okay, I believe that jurisdiction, therefore I believe you are who you say you are. You need to own the what problem, the authorization. So you need to be able to say, Don at company X is allowed to have read-only access to HMI on this, run here. Okay, let's do that. That's authorization. And then the how problem, a lot of manufacturing has not implemented, high-speed, bidirectional fiber, etc. networks. Sometimes it's driven by cellular or satellite or things because of remoteness. Sometimes it has very basic firewalls at the door. In our situation, what we've implemented is a single outbound HTTPS connection, and everything is multiplexed on top of that. Much, much easier to set firewall rules up. You'll pass every pen test. There's not a single port open on the inbound side. You don't have to open anything up. It makes it a lot simpler. If you have who, what, and how sorted out, and you've done it on a singular person, a singular resource basis, you have zero trust. That's what it is. There's a lot of stuff around it about certificates and this and that, but in a nutshell, this is what it is. So that high-level user view, what would it mean to implement a system like this? I have a demo coming up in a second, but the end user, predominantly things are web-based. Now, not everything can be. Rockwell Studio is a fat Windows 32 client that runs the way it does, and maybe you're using SAP, and it is the same way it's always been. But for the most part, things become web-based. The nice thing about that is, although we like to worry about browser security, there's a ton of work being poured into there by Google, by Microsoft, by Apple, by Firefox, etc., on making that secure. So it's really your best bet, in my opinion, is to move everything into the browser. It's got a really good single sign-in model. It's got a really good multi-factor. It's got a good user interface. It works on all devices, and etc. You just move it there and say, well, my HMI is now web-based. Well, how did it become web-based? That's what we do. You take that HMI that's running on a Windows CE device and it becomes VNC, and it becomes just remote desktop, SSH, a web app, etc. My existing company login. So the user is going to see a login screen, and it doesn't just look like their normal login screen. It is their normal login screen. It's the same URL you're going to see at the top. It's the same HTML. It's the same everything. This is really important. Spear phishing is about me social engineering you to do something. So somehow or another, I say to you, hey, person, the company has done some change. I need you to log in and update your credentials. And I send you to a similar website. If the users are trained to have multiple usernames and multiple passwords and multiple spots they log in, bad things occur because I can spear phish you. If the users are trained, everything you use comes to this one sign-in experience. And once you've signed in, you don't need to do it multiple times, sign-in fatigue, and we've got multi-factor on it. And it's only once, not multiple times, multi-factor fatigue. It's much harder to spear phish them. You're going to pass that test when you have somebody comes along and sends that fake spam to your team. Hey, $10 Starbucks gift card to do this, or hey, company's changed its email login now to change something. It's not going to work because the user is going to be part of your line of defense because they're used to signing in one way all the time, and there isn't passwords on all these systems to breach. That's what the identity-aware proxy does. It means there's no change to your existing stuff. My plant floor works the same way it always has. I'm not going in and changing a PLC to some magical web app-based device. It still says what it does on the tin. It still has a 420 milliamp interface and so on. But there's this layer in the middle that's making it appear modern web single sign-on, etc. That's what the end user view needs to be, and that's what we've done, is we make it very simple for narrow task-based workers. I just need to get access to that PLC and check a setting. I just need to get access to that PLC and change a program on it. We're going to adjust the timing on this motor. I need to get that HMI and check this thing. We're just going to go to the SCADA historian. We're going to do something with the inventory. It's the building management system. We're doing our annual fire check, whatever it is, facilities, cameras. Single task workers do their thing with single sign-on the way they like. And there's no layer 3. There's no routing. You don't have to worry about breaking your VPN or you're breaking your video conferencing while it's up, bandwidth, shared subnets. There's no software to install in remote ends, which means you don't have to worry about the partners that are supporting you complaining about the VPN you're telling them to use. All those go away. I'm going to give you a really short demo just because I wanted to make sure it was good for you guys. I pre-recorded this. I'll talk over it, but it is semi-live. I did it last night for you. So the first thing is we'll just walk through the sign-in experience. And you see the sort of, I call it the NASCAR logos, but you decide which things you allow credentials to come from. We use Google G Suite, so I'm showing the sign in with Google. Most of you will have used Office 365 or G Suite, and you can sign in. I'm forcing another second factor on here. Here I did it with my phone. It was a push notification. I clicked on the phone, and all of a sudden the user can see the resource they have access to. Click, they're in this HMI right away. This HMI was web-based. It's based on Node-RED. We'll show a little bit more traditional one in a second. VT SCADA, this one is also somewhat web-based. There's a thick client that can run natively, which is not browser-based, obviously, or this one. And then we're just going to quickly show a remote desktop. Remote desktop can be via VNC or by a Microsoft RDP or Apple remote desktop. It doesn't really matter. The first thing I did is I showed it entirely in the browser. No client, nothing. This would run on any device. You're in a pinch and you got your phone and you got good eyes and you can see it. You're welcome to use it. And then I'm going to show in a second, directly from the browser, it's going to launch the native VNC client. It's going to pop up on the screen. That's that desktop integration. That does require a small piece of software installed. But once the browser's done that, Microsoft Edge or Chrome will just launch, and there's the fat client. That could have been Ignition Designer. It could have been your ERP or SAP. It could have been any of those things. So I just showed the end user experience really briefly, but the idea was to get out of the way and let them do the tasks they're trying to do with the tools they're used to, the way they're used to doing it, without retooling the plant, without changing the security architecture. You don't have to reconfigure your firewall. It's a single outbound connection. You control who's authorized to do what, which is what you need to control, but you do it on an individual person basis rather than company basis. And you don't have to worry about how they work with you, whether they're directly employed by you or they're contractors, they're vendors of you, etc. So the reasons this reduces your risk, shared accounts are gone. So that means that HR churn becomes not your problem. That mythical company that you work with, Siemens, somebody left on bad terms, Siemens took them out of their identity provider. You don't even have to know because the identity provider removed them. So you might still have authorization there, but it's gone. The user can't log in. And it's immediate. It's not like at the end of the month you get a memo. It's gone. Overbroad access is gone. The blast radius is now single systems. So that earlier demo I showed you, if you want to make me have only read-only access only on one of the HMIs, that's all I can do. So even if I maliciously try to do something else, or I'm an idiot and I leave my laptop logged in on a public bus and walk away, or you put a gun to my head, I still can't do anything else. Blast radius and defense in depth, I think, are really important concepts in manufacturing because, let's face it, that network back there is full of unpatched things that once you get into them are not going to be very difficult to walk through all of them. We all know that. We don't patch it every half hour. We can't because sometimes there aren't patches. Sometimes they're not appropriate. Sometimes they break things. Sometimes it takes down production. But once you get that blast radius smaller, it becomes a lot easier to understand what your risk is in becoming more efficient. Okay, we're going to have this data move from here to the public cloud. We're going to have this user able to do this thing. This one, I get a push notification. They're asking access. Let me verify, did I put the safety pin in line 5 so that the robot arm doesn't swing around? Yes. Oh, they accidentally tried to use line 6. They don't have access. They can't do it. Only use line 5. Boom. You have a perfect audit trail. Who did what when? Trust but verify. Worked for Reagan. It'll work for you. Multi-factor authentication, you can enforce it. You can use our system to implement it on those other identity providers. So in case you've got somebody and you're not too sure what they have, you can just force it and say, you want access to my system, you use my second factor. It can be a physical one, a YubiKey. It can be WebAuthn, Face ID, fingerprint, any of those things. It can be a code-based generator in case you're not network connected back on the manufacturing floor and need to type it in, but any of those work. If you remove the VPN, it means the only resource and the network protocol are accessible. You don't have to worry about how do I put rules in that, what ports does it use, etc. You don't have to worry about that. And also there's no shared software or licenses, so you don't have to worry about compliance and a partner that has software that you've dictated. I'm sorry, Jose. Sorry about that, Jose. No, you can't hear me, and now I'm apologizing, but I couldn't connect to the audio. This we think is a really good scenario to be in. Is you move to a zero trust identity-aware proxy, become finer grained everything, easier for the users, and reduced risk. Implementation needs. It's simple. I'm not here suggesting a multi-year project where you map everything out and you replace everything. I'm here suggesting a multi-minute project where you can start on one thing and expand outwards. There's no change to that firewall that's needed. It's outbound only connectivity to a singular IP. You don't have to worry about complex rules. Mapping those users, you don't have to do any configuration with their identity systems. It's a multi-tenant Azure application registration. It's pre-integrated to Google, to Apple, to Yahoo, etc. Whatever is right for your organization, all of the vendors that you work with, they're going to have accounts in either Google or Microsoft. It's how the world works. You can't have a cell phone without it. So G Suite and Office 365 own the entire space. So those users are going to be happy because it's the same single sign-on. You'll be happy. You don't have to do any config, and you're going to get that objective that you want. Maybe they use Okta, no problem, but there's just no work there. That precise authorization where you control the rule and say, this is what they need to do here, let's go. That identity-aware firewall means it's really simple. This user can use Ignition, done. Ignition to that PLC, done. Read-only HMI to that, done. It's just as simple as configuring in the web interface the rules, and it's seamless to that end user. This is something you can do in a day, not a week, not a month, and it doesn't require changes in the software, the configuration of anything that's in your existing plant, and you can roll it into one thing at a time, incrementally. So my call to arms and call to action, farewell to arms, I guess was the George Orwell book, is the first is to recognize that growing underserved demographic. So what's going to happen over time is things are going to keep getting smarter. They're going to slap the letters AI on everything, and it's going to need cloud and NVIDIA and electricity and stuff. And as those things get smarter, they get more specialized, and they have more of an integration with the online world, and there's less and less people that are generalists that can do everything you need on everything, which is going to mean there's more and more individuals that you work with for smaller periods of time, which is going to mean they're going to be forced to be remote. Security is going to keep getting more important. Even without nation-state actors as a risk, we have cybercrime syndicates. We also have just industrial accidents. I did this test with a customer last year, and I prepared some USB keys with a little beacon on it, and I just dropped them around, right? And they got plugged in. What does that mean? It means that your manufacturing plant floor, the air gap that it may or may not enjoy, can be pierced pretty easily. And it has a lot of the same things in it that the IT world does that untargeted ransomware loves to munch on. ESXi and Veeam, they've infiltrated their way in there. You see them. SolarWinds, those types of things are commonly used. So security gets more and more important because you don't want outage and downtime. We saw what happened to Clorox last year, hundreds of millions of dollars of lost production time and inventory due to a cyber incident. This is going to keep happening, and it's going to happen for commercial reasons, for geopolitical reasons, for accidents, for industrial action and union reasons. But it's going to keep happening. That growing underserved demographic that you need to reach, don't make them part of your risk envelope, make them part of your solution. Understand that the VPN is not a solution for everybody. It's not appropriate for everybody. So if I'm going to need to do one thing with you once, I'm not installing your VPN. It's a manufacturer that's debugging something that's gone wrong, and you're doing some diagnostics and they want to see a couple of files. It's just not an appropriate solution. Again, I'm not saying you should take it away from your IT team. Understanding single sign-on, multi-factor for all. If it's important for your team to have this, it should be important for everybody you work with. It makes no sense to say we've invested in this beautiful single sign-on and multi-factor infrastructure for my key critical employees, and then I got a bunch of partners I work with that I've created a username and password shared account, and it lasts for a decade. We don't need any new accounts. As a human, you don't remember them. One of the things I like to remind people of, the average person has about 101 passwords. There's only 88 words in Wonderwall. So if you remember that song, try to remember all the words. That would be the number of passwords. Don't create more of that problem. They're just writing it down. Having that single sign-on means you don't have to worry about that problem. I would love to talk with you about this. My team would love to talk with you about this. You're welcome to come to our website. You can click on the calendar. Somebody will do that. We're going to reach out to you afterwards. You can email me. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Don, you didn't understand my need in manufacturing. It's this. Or I don't really understand how to solve it. Can I see a bit of a demo? We would love to talk with you on those topics. But with that, I think that's all I really had for content. If there's any questions, I'll take them in the chat. But again, I would really love to engage with you folks. Don@agilicus.com. The case studies we have on our website. We have all the previous webinars that we've done there recorded, anything like that. But again, I am asking to engage with you. How can I help you? It's a relatively simple, relatively cost-effective thing to get going. And most of our customers, they get started in a day. They roll it out to a few people. They roll it out to one vendor. They roll it out to this joint venture, and away we go. I see a question. What is required internally to make it work? So the implementation, the technical implementation, it's 99% SaaS, which means it's nearly entirely run by us. There is a piece of software that runs in the site called a connector, and it will run on nearly anything. It'll run as a VM, as a Docker container, on Linux, on Windows, on pfSense, Ubiquiti, MikroTik, Raspberry Pi, Cisco IOX router. That software has a very small footprint, about 100 megabytes of flash and about 100 megabytes of memory. And it acts as the identity-aware gate. So the encryption is from the end user to that software in your site, but our cloud facilitates the API and so on. And it's self-updating and upgrading, so it's ever fresh. Once it's installed and it does its thing. It makes an outbound connection on HTTPS, so port 443 SSL to a fixed IP, and you can then either existing firewall will allow that, or you can put an entry in to allow it. It's also capable of being inspected for those of you who run like Palo Alto next generation firewall or something. There's a model where you can inject the certificate in, so you can inspect the encrypted traffic if you choose. Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll make the webinar available afterwards. So we'll send an email around with the link when it's done. And again, I don't bite. Feel free to email me. Feel free to check out some of the material on the website. That's really what I'm asking for. I'd love to partner with you folks. And there's no real size, small, medium, and large. This is appropriate for everybody who builds things, everybody who has industrial systems, everybody who worries about security. This is a great model. And again, it is very incremental and it's not a big project. I see another question coming in here. But it is something that can be done and demoed very quickly. So the question on the pricing model, so you can see our pricing on our website in the lower right. There's a link. Our pricing is based on users and it's based on named users. There is a model called a requests flow when you work with like a sort of semi-itinerant thing like an MSP, and they can request access, and you as an administrator get a push notification and you can grant them access for that as well. Okay, so thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we will follow up afterwards. I'll send out the material and my team will reach out to see if there's a good chance to engage in the near future. Thank you very much, everybody, and bye-bye.